Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi emphasizes that no one can threaten Egypt, highlighting the country's role as an oasis of security and peace in the region. Israeli occupation forces continue their aggression on Jenin and its camp for the second day in a row. And US President Donald Trump says he plans an executive order to boost California's water supply and that he is open to Elon Musk buying TikTok. It's 4 p.m. Cairo local time and you're now watching Q News. I'm Hani Saif and we begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Egypt. The Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has emphasized that no one can threaten Egypt, highlighting the country's role as an oasis of security and peace in the region. Speaking at the 73rd anniversary of Police Day, President al-Sisi stressed that Egypt does not conspire against anyone and has overcome many challenges through its own efforts. President al-Sisi honored the sacrifices of Egyptian police officers, emphasizing the values of honor, respect, and dignity. He also highlighted Egypt's role in the Gaza ceasefire, reaffirming the nation's commitment to peace. Police Day, celebrated on January 25th, commemorates the 1952 battle in Ismailia. And now we move on to the latest developments in Gaza. The Israeli occupation forces have continued their aggression on the city of Jenin and its camp for the second day in a row. Palestine Red Crescent reported that 4 Palestinians were injured by Israeli forces' live ammunition during their ongoing onslaught on the city of Jenin and its refugee camp. Palestinian media reported that the Israeli occupation forces forced a number of local citizens and neighborhoods inside Jenin camp to evacuate their homes to Wadi Burqin. The occupation opened one passage and forced residents to take it. Israeli occupation forces have detained at least 25 Palestinians from the West Bank since yesterday evening. Additionally, Israeli forces briefly detained nearly 30 Palestinian workers who were constructing a road in the Khirbet al-Dir area. Palestinian media reported that the Israeli occupation forces have continued to tighten the military measures at most of the entrances and exits of the governorates in the West Bank for the third day in a row. They closed the entrances to the villages of Nabi Ilyas and Kafr Laqif with an iron gate and prevented civilians from moving. 898 Israeli checkpoints and iron gates have been installed by the occupation army in the West Bank. Out of the 898 military barriers and iron gates, 18 iron gates were installed by the occupation since the beginning of 2025. For the third consecutive day, the occupation forces tightened the military measures at most of the entrances and exits of the governorates in the West Bank. Israeli occupation forces have fired bullets at the beach of Gaza City and Salah ad-Din axis in the south of the Strip, violating the ceasefire agreement. Palestinian media reported that the occupation naval boats fired 3 shells off the beach of Gaza City, and that the Israeli army also fired in the vicinity of El Firdaus area on the Salah ad-Din axis, south of the Palestinian city of Rafah. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has warned against Israel's potential annexation of the West Bank. Speaking at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Switzerland, Guterres stated that there is no guarantee that the ceasefire agreement will hold, and underscored the importance of achieving a permanent ceasefire in Gaza and a two-state solution.
Different parts of the world, not least the Middle East. And there is finally a measure of hope when a ceasefire and hostage release deal in Gaza takes place, and we are working to surge up desperately needed humanitarian aid.
The UN's Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese, has warned of the possibility of Israel committing genocide in the West Bank, similar to the one it committed in the Gaza Strip. In a post on X, Albanese condemned Israeli aggression in Jenin, warning that genocide against Palestinians won't stop unless Israel is forced to act. The ongoing attacks have killed 10, including a child, and left over 40 injured. The Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has condemned the ongoing Israeli aggression on Jenin and its refugee camp, including the forced displacement of families, collective punishment, and destruction of infrastructure. In a statement, the ministry stressed that this aggression is part of a deliberate Israeli strategy aimed at consolidating the occupation, imposing Israeli sovereignty, and advancing the gradual annexation of the West Bank, including Jerusalem. It denounced these measures as a clear manifestation of Israel's colonial expansionist agenda. The ministry also called on the United Nations Security Council to assume its legal and moral obligations in addressing the suffering of the Palestinian people. And for more analysis, we now move to Mona Msalhi in our newsroom. Mona.
Thank you so much, Hani. And for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Editor-in-Chief of Al-Ahram newspaper, Ashraf Al-Ashri. Good afternoon to you and welcome to Qnews. Mr. Ashri, if I may ask you about how Israel is dealing with the West Bank compared to Gaza at this very particular time, putting into consideration the recent ceasefire in Gaza.
Good evening to you and to your viewers. Of course, what's happening in the West Bank now is some sort of a trade between Netanyahu and the far-wing officials, as we have seen Ben Gvir resigning and Smotrich threatening to resign. So now he's providing a military operation on the West Bank to cool down the Israeli public opinion. Netanyahu wants to preserve the government because with the Smotrich resignation, he will lose a lot of confidence and the representation of the cabinet will be very weak. So he's trying to satisfy the far right officials by these military operations being waged on the West Bank. And he is providing more settlements, more control for the annexation of the West Bank to Israel, as he pledged during the past period that Trump now is supporting and giving more opportunities to Netanyahu. We have seen the exchange of detainees and hostages during this ceasefire, and that's why we have seen the escalation in the West Bank. It is a part of a greater plan to increase the settlements in the West Bank and eliminate Hamas fighters or any Iranian support existence in the West Bank. And consequently, they want a long-term military operations in West Bank, leading to more death and detaining tens and dozens of Palestinians.
Right. If I may ask you here, sir, why did Israel launch this major offensive in Jenin, particularly with the Gaza?
It's an attempt to take control over the West Bank with the excuse of the Hamas combatants or the Jihad group combatants in Jenin. It's an attempt to increase the Israeli existence in the West Bank. As Netanyahu pledged, he is taking a war on 7 fronts, eliminating Hezbollah, the Houthis, and the Bashar al-Assad regime, and Hamas and Gaza. And now he wanted to tell the Israeli community that they are taking the longer journey to eliminate Hamas and Jihad in the Jenin camp, and they are willing to stop any kind of support financially or military-wise to Hamas in Jenin. He wants to satisfy the far right and the Israeli street community after their opposition to the deal during the past few days. The captives in Gaza now they are taking more detainees in the West Bank.
If I may ask you, could this be the true objectives of the Israeli military operation in Jenin? And what, from your point of view, could be the impact of this offensive on the broader peace and ceasefire?
Of course, Netanyahu is taking advantage of Trump assuming office and being sworn in the day before yesterday, and as the U.S. administration is busy setting up their conditions in the U.S. as they are busy with the internal affairs in the United States of America. He's taking advantage of this opportunity. As everyone now is looking at the U.S., he's repeating the scenario of the hostilities that happened and took place in the West Bank for 14 months. He's sending a message to the far right that they are fighting Hamas and Jihad in the West Bank to and stop the Iranian presence supporting the resistance in the West Bank, and consequently he is seeking to take over the West Bank, and so he's providing more escalation to stop the negotiations in the second and third phases, according to the statements by Smotrich, to only have the first phase of the deal, and then they can withdraw from the deal and cancel the phase 2 and phase 3. He has a complete scheme and taking advantage of the U.S. cover provided by Trump.
Right. From Cairo, that was Editor-in-Chief of Al-Ahram newspaper, Mr. Ashraf Al-Ashri. We thank you so much for your insights here. And
thank you, Mona. Moving on, the border between Israel and Gaza stayed calm as the ceasefire took hold for a third day. The truce took effect on Sunday, January 19th, after 15 months of conflict, with the handover of the first 3 detainees held by Hamas and the release of 90 Palestinians from Israeli jails. Attention is shifting to the rebuilding of the coastal enclave, which the Israeli occupation military has reduced to vast tracts of rubble. Ladies and gentlemen, we go live now to the UN Special Envoy to Syria, Geir Pedersen, who is holding a news conference in Damascus.
Starting with the first question about the relevance of your Security Council mandate and 2254.
Thank you. You may have seen that Security Council issued a statement on the 17th of December that emphasized that the principles of Security Council Resolution 2254 is still valid. What do we mean by that? Of course, we all understand, let me say what we don't mean by that. We don't mean, no, that there should be, as the resolution says, that there should be negotiations by the government, between the government and the opposition. That is obviously no longer relevant. So when we say the two principles, the core principles, is one, I think something all Syrians would agree to, and that is the protection of Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity and its unity. The second principle is about the need for a political process that is going through a transitional phase that is inclusive, and as it says in the resolution, it is non-sectarian, with the help of the United Nations. So, and then there are many other issues in the resolution. It's about the missing and detained, it's about refugees, it's about humanitarian assistance, and all of this. That being said, there are now also discussions going on about the possibilities to have a new resolution supporting what is now the transitional phase going on in Syria. But this will most probably take time. It is, of course, up to the Security Council itself. So what is, and just then to align with the last question, so what is the role of the United Nations? As you all know, the United Nations are many different things. So we, the United Nations, are here to support what I will call political issues, governance issues. We obviously will continue to support on the humanitarian front, humanitarian assistance. We all know that there are still more than 17 million people in Syria in need of humanitarian assistance. Then, of course, the issues related to development and economic support. And, of course, here, all the issues related to sanctions. That will be critical to be addressed if we are to see real reconstruction taking place. Then there are issues related to, the rule of law, human rights, and what I mentioned to you on transitional justice. In all of these areas, United Nations have experience, and we can contribute. But the United Nations will never impose itself on anyone. It needs to be invited to take part in a cooperation. And for instance, when it comes to the transitional process, we know that there have been more than 40 countries going through transitional processes where the United States have helped. We are also here to help now, but as I said, this needs still to be Syrian-led and Syrian-owned. This can only succeed if the Syrian people themselves are ready to take the lead in this and to move forward. And from what I've been hearing in the last few days, I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing, and I hope we will know, within the next foreseeable future, we will see a movement towards the next phase of the transitional period.
Just also to the question on the relationship with the STF, yes, and as well as the fighting in the Northeast, and that's 40 transitional processes that the United Nations helped. Mr. Pedersen was
so let's, on the situation in the Northeast, I think we are all following it extremely carefully. Obviously, we need to give the negotiations between the caretaker authority and the STF a chance. It goes without saying that also Turkey and the United States have a key role to play in supporting this. And we are hopeful that we will now allow the two parties enough time to be able to move forward, so this does not end in the full military confrontation that will not serve the interest of the Syrian people.
Second round of questions. I'll start with Syria TV and then to Al Jazeera, please. So this woman, the woman in the front, please. Sasha, if we could bring a mic over here. Thank you. Second row, thank you very much.
حنين عمران تلفزيون سوريا. ما مصير العقوبات على سوريا ألم يحن الوقت لرفعها وما مصير المساعدات الأممية في ظل هذه العقوبات ولا سيما أن الشعب السوري معظمه تحت خط الفقر.
If you could just pass the microphone back behind you to the gentleman in the jacket and the glasses, please. No, behind you, please. Thank you.
We were just live in Damascus, and that was the UN Special Envoy to Syria, Geir Pedersen, who was holding a news conference. The UN envoy to Syria stated that there must be guarantees to involve Syrians in the future of their country. He also emphasized that the UN will continue to work with the new administration in Syria. Additionally, the envoy made it clear that they do not accept Israeli presence on Syrian land. He expressed hope for a new vision in which all Syrians participate, ensuring that the future of Syria is shaped by its people. A convoy of trucks carrying humanitarian assistance have rolled into Gaza's Rafah as a ceasefire enters the fourth day. People were seen rushing and gathering aid that had fallen off the trucks as they trudged along Rafah's battered roads, which are flanked by ruins of damaged buildings. More than 2,400 truckloads of United Nations supplies have entered Gaza in the 3 days since the Israel-Hamas ceasefire agreement came into effect. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said 897 aid trucks entered the Gaza Strip on Tuesday. The truce deal requires at least 600 truckloads of aid to be allowed into Gaza every day of the initial 6-week ceasefire, including 50 carrying fuel. Half of those trucks are supposed to go to Gaza's north, where experts have warned famine is imminent. Moving on to the United States, US President Donald Trump has said he will issue an executive order to increase the availability of water in California, following disastrous wildfires that recently tore through several Los Angeles neighborhoods. Trump also said he was open to billionaire Elon Musk buying social media app TikTok if the Tesla CEO wanted to do so. The short video app, used by 170 million Americans, was taken offline temporarily for users shortly before a law that said it must be sold by its Chinese owner, ByteDance, on national security grounds or be banned, took effect on Sunday.
So they have to produce a lot of electricity, and we'll make it possible for them to get that.
US President Donald Trump has announced private sector investment of up to $500 billion to fund artificial intelligence infrastructure. OpenAI, SoftBank and Oracle plan a Texas-based joint venture called Stargate and have committed $100 billion initially and then up to $500 billion to Stargate over the next 4 years. SoftBank CEO Masayoshi Son, OpenAI's Sam Altman and Oracle's Larry Ellison joined Trump at the White House for the launch. The announcement on Trump's second day in office follows the rolling back of former President Joe Biden's executive order on AI that was intended to reduce the risks artificial intelligence poses to consumers, workers, and national security.
AI infrastructure in the United States and very quickly, moving very rapidly, creating over 1.
These are all the news we have for now, but here's a reminder of the stories we've been covering. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi emphasizes that no one can threaten Egypt, highlighting the country's role as an oasis of security and peace in the region. Israeli occupation forces continue their aggression on Jenin and its camp for the second day in a row. And US President Donald Trump says he plans an executive order to boost California's water supply and that he is open to Elon Musk buying TikTok. This concludes our news bulletin for this hour, but please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEGY to stay informed. I'm Henny Safe, thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.